federal government backs down on parts of its industrial relations legislation. Qantas cabin crew threaten industrial action over the Christmas period, and a rush of international dignitaries to visit Australia over the next 12 months. It's Friday, the 25th of November, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Adam Lang.
Well, good morning, Michael. It seems I'm back off the bench.
You are indeed. Welcome back. After a 3-day stint on the bench, welcome back.
It's a surprise to me and you. Now, Michael, we're a business news podcast, and I have a question for you.
Oh, yes, Adam.
Do you have some new business to talk about?
Yes, Adam, I do have some news, and thank you very much for the question. It feels like you might have been leading me to this, but I do appreciate it. My news is that I have a novel coming out. It's called How to Be Remembered. It is, of course, my first book. It's being published in Australia by Allen & Unwin, who are terrific publishers. It's also going overseas as well, and I'll have some more news on that on another day. But yesterday, How to Be Remembered went on pre-sale. It doesn't come out until March next year, but you can pre-order it now if you like. And if you like books like The Midnight Library or Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. Chances are you're going to like How to Be Remembered. You can head to my website, michaelthompson.net.au, or follow me on Instagram, perhaps Michael Thompson Author, for more. And the best part is, Adam, if you buy it right now through Booktopia, you're actually getting it in the middle of the Black Friday sale. So you get 20% off. And I won't read too much into the fact that it's only just gone on pre-sale and it's already a little bit discounted. I won't take that personally.
Michael, from a fellow traveller, I am so thrilled for you. It is an incredibly rare achievement that someone writes a book and gets it published. And I am just inspired by what you've done. So good luck with it.
Thank you, Adam.
I think it's going to be a massive success. And I would encourage anyone who's interested, have a look. Check it out, michaelthompson.net.au.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you very much for your support. Anyway, we have quite a big show to get through today, and we've got an interview coming up after the show. Sean is speaking with James Shale, who is an expert engineer at Dyson, and it is another angle to the Dyson story, and it is particularly about the demand for certain products of theirs. This is a fascinating chat, actually. It's worth sticking around for that one. But the main story this morning, Adam, the federal government has backed down on its threshold for small businesses in its industrial relations legislation as it rushes bills through ahead of the Christmas recess. The government confirmed yesterday that it would lift the threshold for small businesses under the legislation from 15 to 20 employees, which it claims is going to see another 500,000 businesses exempt, though it doesn't necessarily mean that the legislation will get through the Senate.
Michael, there's still a way to play on this one. Yesterday, the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, COSBOA, asked for more time to consider the legislation. The opposition is making similar calls, and the Australian Council of Trade Unions, the ACTU, released a report that says multi-employer bargaining, which is the pointy end of the legislation, will narrow the gender pay gap for women. Now, not surprisingly, the research does back up the planned changes. The report says women on collective agreements earn $102.60 more per week on average than women not covered. Employer groups are pushing back against the legislation, saying it will hurt small businesses, create dislocation and drive more industrial relations disputes.
Adam, there really has been a rush of activity in Canberra. There was a final vote on legislation to restore the rights of the ACT and the Northern Territory parliaments to pass euthanasia legislation. That's been pushed to next week, but the ban is likely to be overturned. The legislation providing for the National Anti-Corruption Commission passed the lower house yesterday, though that will need work when it gets to the Senate.
Michael, I totally agree. The rush to the Christmas recess is certainly present in Canberra and maybe even a few businesses around the country as we head towards the end of November. But one more story out of Parliament yesterday. Government Services Minister Bill Shorten has ordered a review into major federal contracts awarded to a consulting firm called Synergy 360 after allegations in 9 newspapers that Liberal frontbencher Stuart Robert provided assistance to the owners. Mr. Robert has denied any wrongdoing, saying he didn't help the company receive the contracts, but Minister Shorten has asked Services Australia and the National Disability Insurance Agency to investigate the claims.
All right, turning to local markets now, Adam, the S&P ASX 200 was up 0.1% yesterday to 7,242 points. That's a new 6-month high for the bourse. But underneath the relatively stable result, we actually had the technology and material sectors posting strong gains while the energy stocks slumped.
Michael, there was plenty of corporate news around too. A mid-tier gold miner, Regis Resources, told its annual general meeting that its underlying business continues to strengthen despite its poor share price performance. Whitehaven's share price fell 6.7% after Chief Executive Paul Flynn sold 900,000 shares in the company, worth $7.8 million for personal reasons. The coal group's share price hit a record high last month. Online retail darling Kogan.com said it was getting rid of inventory that it had accumulated and the company was in a net positive cash position. The group said the selling period from July to October was subdued, which has become a pretty common story in the e-commerce space.
And on international markets, Adam, oil fell sharply over the past 36 hours as Russia imposed a higher than expected price cap, and figures show a surprise build-up in US reserves. Brent crude is trading at around $85 a barrel.
Wall Street trading was closed overnight for the Thanksgiving holiday. Yesterday morning, it ended higher, capping a pretty good run for the S&P 500, which is up 12% from its low in the middle of October. The Australian dollar is buying 67.5 US cents.
Adam, I know you're not a fan of abbreviations, but I was expecting you to say the Aussie dollar just then.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. It is a particularly endearing quirk of your character that you will never, ever use an abbreviation if you can use the full term.
Yes, why wouldn't you? Although I did just abbreviate wouldn't, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yes, you used a contraction?
It is?
Anyway, well, this has taken a very dull turn. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Adam, Victorians head to the ballot box tomorrow with last-minute polling suggesting the Daniel Andrews government and the Matthew Guy-led opposition are neck and neck.
Yes, Michael, and just like the federal election, the independents are expected to have a say in the new parliament and may well hold the balance of power with between 3 and 5 seats. Infrastructure spending, the economy, education and health have all had a run in the campaign, and yesterday there was plenty of discussion about lowering the age for probationary drivers.
Adam, AGL Energy will close its Torrens Island B gas power station in South Australia in mid-2026, blaming the new interconnector cable being built between South Australia and New South Wales. One unit at the facility, which actually commenced operating back in 1976, was mothballed 12 months ago, and the remaining 3 will close on June 30, 2026.
Michael, this demonstrates the increasingly challenging economics of running older power stations, which are up against cheaper renewable energy. And in the case of Torrens Island B, the technology is so old that it actually doesn't allow the facility to ramp up or down to match demand. The new interconnector being built should unlock about $20 billion in new renewable projects and is expected to open mid-2026. It will make Torrens uneconomic, hence AGL's decision to close it.
Now, this next one, Adam, is not necessarily good news if you're planning your Christmas travel, because Qantas cabin crew have voted in favour of industrial action, which is now threatening to disrupt travel for millions of flyers right through the Christmas period. The vote opens the way for crew to stop work for up to 24 hours, ban overtime work, and withdraw from boarding responsibilities as part of the fight for better pay and better conditions.
Yes, Michael, and as we contend with high prices for travel, Qantas has offered all unionised workers a 3-year pay deal with 2 years of wage freezes, followed by a 3rd year with a 3% pay rise. But the key sticking point is the conditions, whereby the union claims the carrier wants to roll out much longer shifts.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of anxious travellers watching this one closely. Now, Harvey Norman plans to open more than 50 stores in Malaysia over the next 6 years, making the announcement after revealing global sales had jumped nearly 7% so far this year.
That's right, Michael, and it's a strong result. At the group's annual general meeting, Chief Executive Katie Page said the group already had 28 stores in the country. The news came as the retailer said aggregate sales grew by 6.9% through to October 31. Same store sales gained 6.3% at its company-owned stores and its independent Harvey Norman, Domain and Joyce Main branded franchise sites. Certainly, consumers are still out there spending.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? Now, some of Australia's biggest food suppliers expect double-digit price rises over the next couple of years as supply chain disruptions, labour shortages and natural disasters push up costs. Festive season staples are likely to cost much more this year than last year. Adam, we are full of good news for the Christmas period here, aren't we?
Yeah, the pressures on prices continue. According to the Financial Review, Independent Food Distributors Australia Chief Executive Richard Forbes said price rises of between 6 and 8% were expected in both 2023 and 2024. Recent floods and supply chain problems have prompted the National Food Supply Chain Alliance to lobby the federal government to support the creation of a national food security plan.
Okay, so food is going to be more expensive at Christmas and travel will potentially be delayed by Qantas strikes. It feels like somewhere behind all of this, a Grinch is just pulling the strings, don't you think?
Don't let him take over, Michael.
Yes.
We will win.
Yes, fight. Now, how about this one? Australian Bitcoin miner Iris Energy is facing a potential US class action over claims it misled investors. We actually spoke about Iris earlier this week because the Nasdaq-listed company is close to collapse, with creditors demanding the group repay its debts. With the price of Bitcoin falling, the value of Iris's networked computers or Bitcoin miners has fallen too significantly.
That's right, Michael. The Australian Financial Review reports a US law firm is now investigating allegations Iris Energy's founders misled investors by making false or misleading statements regarding the value of loans, now totaling more than $100 million.
Now, I mentioned this one at the top of the show, Adam. Former US President Barack Obama is heading to Australia to present a number of paid speeches at leadership events in Sydney and Melbourne. 5 years after leaving the White House, the 44th president will talk about leadership and how to navigate an unpredictable future. There's plenty of material there, don't you think?
President Obama is sure to draw a crowd. He hasn't been here since November 2014, and that was the G20 Leaders Summit in Brisbane. Before that, he visited at Prime Minister Julia Gillard's invitation in November 2011 when he addressed a joint sitting of federal parliament. Current President Joe Biden is expected to visit in the first half of next year for a summit of the Quad Group. And while we're on the subject of leader visits, the 36-year-old Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin will visit Australia next week.
All right, moving on to overseas news now, Adam, and much of Ukraine was without power after a barrage of Russian missiles hit the country, leaving 6 people dead in what was the most damaging attack in weeks. The capital, Kyiv, and other large cities were without power, and the neighbouring country of Moldova also experienced outages.
Michael, 3 nuclear power plants in Ukraine were forced to shut down and about half the country's train service was delayed. The Ukrainian Air Force said Russia launched about 70, that's 70, cruise missiles from warplanes and from 2 boats in the Black Sea, and that Ukrainian air defences shot down 51 of them. In recent weeks, Russia has escalated its attack on Ukraine's energy systems after a number of battlefield losses and ahead of winter. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has announced it will support the Ukrainian economy with short-term loans up to US $20 billion. The invasion has destroyed large parts of the Ukrainian economy, creating an expected 30% contraction this year and inflation around 25%.
That is significant.
Yeah, they're big numbers. The tragedies are obviously human, industrial, but also the economy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, police in China have beaten workers protesting over a pay dispute at the biggest factory for Apple's iPhone. The tech giant's latest model has been delayed by controls imposed as China tries to contain a surge in COVID-19 cases, meaning that its contractor, Foxconn, is struggling to fill orders for the iPhone 14.
Michael, the beatings happened after thousands of employees complained that the company changed the terms of their pay. Last month, employees walked away from the factory in the central city of Zhengzhou following complaints about unsafe working conditions. According to Associated Press, China's status as an export powerhouse is based on factories such as Foxconn that assemble the world's consumer electronics, toys, and other goods. The ruling Communist Party is trying to contain the latest wave of COVID outbreaks without shutting down factories and the rest of the economy as it did in early 2020.
Now, this last one, Adam, is a pretty extraordinary story. US regulators have approved CSL Behring's haemophilia B gene therapy, which is it's a one-off infusion that basically frees patients from having regular treatments, but it costs $3.5 million a dose, which makes it the most expensive medicine in the world.
A study of the drug shows that administered just once, the number of bleeding events expected over the course of the year falls by 54%, according to Bloomberg. It also freed 94% of patients from the time-consuming and costly infusions, which are currently used to control the potentially deadly condition. Market watchers agree the price is high, but also point out that the alternates are costly and patients have to constantly live in fear of bleeds, so the drug, even at $3.5 million per dose, could be a success.
It is a remarkable story, that one. Now, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Today, Sean Aylmer is speaking to James Shale, expert engineer at Dyson. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist. That's on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, wherever you listen to podcasts. And tomorrow, Adam, we are back for the weekend edition, and it is back to me and Sean head-to-head over the bigger stories of the week, and you are back in your judging role. How are you feeling? Confident?
I'm feeling ready to don the gavel once again, Michael.
Does one don a gavel? Because that would imply that...
Oh, you don a gown, don't you? And the horsehair wig. Maybe you just hold the gavel.
Yes. Yeah. So you're donning your wig and holding a gavel and you're ready to sit in judgment. Do you stand in judgment?
For you and Sean, I will.
Thank you very much. It does feel like we're getting bogged down.
Well, before we close, Michael, michaelthompson.net.au, how to be remembered. Please have a look at it.
Thank you very much once again, Adam. It is Friday, the 25th of November, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.